KAYLEE Jayde Priest was born on January 31st, 2017 in Edgbaston, Birmingham, this is in England, when her mother, Nikki Priest, was only 19 years old. The blonde-haired, ash-colored and green-eyed girl never had any kind of contact with her biological father. However, shortly before she turned 1 year old, her mother started dating Dan Gregory, who was happy to take on the role of stepfather. For 8 months, the couple lived in the apartment of the boy's mother, Lisa Dixon. This woman noticed that KAYLEE was very enthusiastic, proactive, and smiling, but she did not see the same characteristics in her mother. Nikki was too hard on her daughter, to the point of giving her some beatings when she did not behave as she expected. At that time, the couple found out they were expecting their first child together. At the same time, Nikki created a TikTok account under the username NikkiP210 where she posted videos of the pregnancy, showed how it was progressing, and also shared how she felt about it. In fact, on some occasions, she also made videos with KAYLEE. As you can tell, let's say she seemed happy to be a mother. In others, she was seen dancing with her pregnant belly and swinging the little one back and forth. It seemed like an innocent situation where mother and daughter were having fun. Obviously, you're going to realize it's far from reality. In fact, in July 2019, Nikki and Dan moved to a new apartment in a building complex. This is in West Midlands, where the second baby was born, whose name did not transcend, but this did not make motherhood flourish within Nikki. She often asked her own mother, Debbie Whitmule, to look after her children while she used her phone to post photos and videos on social media. Her sister, Catherine Priest, also noticed that she scolded KAYLEE too often, raising her voice. In addition, she noticed some marks on the little girl, which her mother attributed to the typical clumsiness of a child. Dan, for his part, insisted that Nikki had never harmed his stepdaughter. However, perhaps the most striking thing was the layout of the apartment. KAYLEE's bedroom was barely furnished. It had no rugs, curtains, or lights. It also had nothing to indicate that it belonged to a little girl, like princess decorations or dolls, things like that. As if this wasn't enough, in the living room there was a miniature chair and table where KAYLEE ate alone. The mistreatment of the little girl obviously did not go unnoticed by her nanny either. The 17-year-old girl saw how Dan cared for KAYLEE, played with her, bathed her, and prepared her breakfast while Nikki slept in late and referred to her in an offensive manner. She even went so far as to say that she regretted having her, which made KAYLEE cry. Other people who witnessed the mistreatment of the little girl included April Cooper, for example, a tenant in the apartment building. On one occasion, Nikki put KAYLEE in her stroller more forcefully than she should have. April warned her that she would call social services if she continued to mistreat the little girl, but ultimately chose not to interfere. I wish she had. In the spring of 2020, Dan and Nikki ended their relationship and she kicked him out of the house they shared, which only worsened the family situation. From then on, the woman began to throw parties with very loud music, plus a large amount of this happiness herb could be smelled coming from the apartment. This situation was not at all suitable for a little girl. Just a week after the separation, Nikki started a new romantic relationship with a 22-year-old man named Colm Redford, who also lived in West Midlands. This also did not cause a change in KAYLEE's routine, by the way. In fact, on July 7th of that year, the nanny witnessed a tense situation. KAYLEE covered her little brother's head with a blanket and loudly expressed that she was hungry. Nikki, meanwhile, grabbed her daughter's arm, yelled at her, and led her to the room. In addition, the employee noticed that the little girl's neglect had worsened since her stepfather's departure. Her hair was always full of knots. She wore oversized pajamas, and there was a lack of food in the kitchen. The girl tried to give Nikki advice on how to better care for the little one, but the young mother's response was to fire her. Meanwhile, despite having debts, being behind on rent, and having 2 children to support, Nikki used the universal credit to gift a Bayerische Motorenwerke model car to Caleb. While she gave him 900 euros to pay for it, the boy later found out that the real price of the vehicle was only 300. He didn't inform his girlfriend and kept the remaining money, being as despicable as her. He also had no interest in forming a bond with his partner's children. In fact, on one occasion, the police chased him while he was in his vehicle with Kelly and the baby. And instead of worrying about the safety of her children and the behavior of her new boyfriend, Nikki became even more addicted to TikTok, which changed her personality for the worse. Far from the maternal content that had earned her followers, reaching 1,000, she began to upload videos where everything revolved around the bond in real life. By then, however, sometimes KAYLEE was part of these recordings, but in a strange way. You could see Nikki taking the girl from her arms, forcing her to move back and forth, at one point even pushing simultaneously. This obviously brought her more views, but it didn't change the bond in real life. By then, the woman had no interest in meeting her daughter's needs. In fact, she would sometimes leave her in a dirty diaper for hours or physically punish her when she didn't announce that she needed to go to the bathroom. During one of her visits to the house, Debbie noticed that KAYLEE's room had no light and that the apartment was completely dirty. Concerned about her daughter's attitude towards her grandchildren, she decided to call social services. However, when they responded to the complaint and showed up at the home, Nikki presented herself as a mother who took good care of her children and said that the gloomy state of the house was due to her doing renovations. Sadly, the outcomes of the neglect were nearly visible. Indeed, at 1:17 in the morning on August 9, 2020, paramedics received a call from the other end of the line. They could hear Nikki's voice telling them that her daughter was seriously ill. Once they arrived at the apartment complex, a paramedic trainee met with Nikki, who was crying and visibly distressed. Noticing their presence, the young woman screamed, "I don't think she's alive!" Once they found her, they confirmed the mother's suspicions. The little girl lay lifeless on a carpet with vomit around her. While some of it was recent, there were also dry remains, evidently from previous days. But that wasn't the only thing that alarmed the paramedics. They noticed that the little girl had bruises all over her body and that the death did not seem to have occurred so recently. They also noticed that Nikki had not tried to resuscitate KAYLEE as they had ordered him to do until the emergency services arrived. When Nikki and Caleb were asked what had happened, they responded that they had no idea, but they assumed that the little girl had fallen while playing. The paramedics didn't believe a word of what they said, obviously. So alarmed, they decided to call the police as everything pointed to them being at a crime scene. The autopsy then revealed that KAYLEE had lost her life due to the severe injuries to her chest and abdomen. In addition, medical examinations showed that the little girl had a total of 68 injuries that did not date from that day, such as broken ribs, fractures in the lower part of the leg, and a broken sternum. After these results, Nick and Callum were arrested on suspicion of intentional neglect of a year and intentional mistreatment of a child. They were respectively taken to the police station so they could provide a new version of the events. During the interrogation, both appeared extremely nervous and insisted that the death had occurred after the little girl lost her appetite and began to vomit. They emphasized that she had probably fallen from some high surface. However, they could not specify how this accident would have happened. Nikki only remembered that weeks ago KAYLEE had fallen from her play table. Seeing then that the police did not believe a single word of her silly story, the woman decided to completely change the course of the statement. She claimed that her daughter was in good health until the day before the death. Caleb spent 10 minutes alone with the little girl in the room while she smoked a cigarette on the balcony. She also indicated that a week ago her partner had hit the girl hard and that this happened every time he visited her. Finally, she emphasized that she was innocent and had no reason to take the life of this innocent girl, KAYLEE. And for his part, Callum showed a total lack of interest in the little girl. When the officers asked him how he felt about her death, he replied that she was not his daughter, so it really hadn't affected him. He then pointed to Nikki as the culprit of the crime, although he did not want to give details of how it had occurred. Since the police had no evidence to arrest them at that time, they were let go. That's right, just as you're hearing it. Even though they continued to investigate him thoroughly, Nikki, for his part, acted as if nothing had happened. Just a few days after the death of his daughter, Nikki posted a very strange video from his account. In it, she could be seen swaying her hips and swinging her arms while singing about making money and getting in shape. She also told her followers that she wanted to focus on herself and that she didn't want to demotivate them, as she knew they were expecting her to provide entertainment. A week later, she posted another TikTok where she appeared to be crying while lip-syncing to the lyrics. "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I know I messed up a lot. I should have done better." This song is called For My Parents. It's by an artist named Anna Clanding, but anyway, her seemingly sad expression was hardly convincing and she didn't even manage to shed a tear. Fake, totally fake. A month later, the woman decided to pay tribute to her deceased daughter again on her birthday with a balloon from her third birthday. First, there was a video of her pregnant with her other child, with KAYLEE lying on her lap and the text "I miss you" and a crying emoji. Then there were a series of photos of the little girl where she could be seen wearing a pink blouse and smiling at the camera, and a balloon from her third birthday. All this accompanied by the text, "Rest in peace, dear. Mom loves you." What I'm saying is, before recording this video and starting to research, I didn't know this girl and it was my first time seeing her, but you still feel empathy when you see these videos. You feel the sadness. I don't understand how this woman was so brazen and how she didn't care about anything, but well, that's how things are. However, after this post, her content went back to being the usual. She uploaded about 20 TikToks dancing to R&B rap songs, also lip-syncing to these same songs. By then, KAYLEE's case had become media in the UK, and the repercussions obviously didn't take long to arrive. Then in September 2020, Nicki uploaded her last video in which she showed off several makeup purchases she had made. And this is what I mean by mocking. After this, all the TikToks prior to KAYLEE's death, where she could be seen grabbing the little girl's limbs and moving them in sync with the music, disappeared. It was not clear whether these posts were deleted by Nicki herself or by the app due to aggressive comments from users. On the other hand, the police had already saved them, obviously, and had them in a folder to use as evidence of the abuse Nicki inflicted on her daughter, although some key testimonies were still missing. Neighbors of the complex reported that since Nicki moved into her apartment in mid-2019, they regularly heard her yelling at KAYLEE, including comments like "shut up, go away, or leave me alone." They pointed out that she never had anything positive or kind to say to her child. Thus, over the months, the physical abuses became increasingly frequent, and the residents noticed that when Kelly cried, her mother did not attend to her and covered up the noise with very loud music. After that, they always saw the little girl in the hallway full of bruises. The agents also took the statement of Lisa, Nicki's former mother-in-law. The woman recounted what she had witnessed during the time the young woman lived with them, emphasizing how aggressive she was with KAYLEE. This testimony was added to that of the nanny, who narrated the little patience the mother had for her daughter. However, none of this was still enough in the trial. This is how you're listening. The agents decided to intervene the cell phone of this mother, in quotes, in search of more evidence of the hatred she had for her daughter, and they found them. This is how they discovered that in a text message exchange on July 24th, 2020, days before KAYLEE's death, Nicki told KAYLEE that she would kill her daughter because she kept leaving the living room or going to the kitchen, and that she had beaten and slapped her for soiling her diaper. Nicki seemed, as you realize, to be bothered by the mere presence of the little girl and did not want to fulfill her obligations as a mother under any terms. In another, Callum told her to keep the little brat away from him and that he was fed up with his daughter. This showed that Kelly's new stepfather also had no interest in taking care of her. With this evidence, the prosecutors already had more than enough reasons to assert that Nicki had beaten her daughter to death and that Callum had been a participant in the act. But don't think the situation ended there. This indifference and hatred that Nicki had for her daughter was also evidenced in the surveillance cameras of the complex. In the recording, you could see the little girl and her mother together using an elevator in the apartment block where they lived. Nicki did not help her daughter get in and kept a certain distance from her. She had a cigarette in her mouth, was looking at herself in the mirror and adjusting her blouse while ignoring KAYLEE, the little girl was watching her from the side. Around 1:41 in the afternoon, Nikki could be seen walking much further ahead than KAYLEE, while the little girl sped up to keep pace with her. Then they walked out of the complex. Again, Nikki avoided holding her daughter's hand and interacting with her. They continued walking in the same way. The mother never turned around to make sure her daughter was okay. Around 2:55 in the afternoon, you could see KAYLEE arriving excitedly at the complex with her mother walking quite far from her. Nikki kept more than a meter away while KAYLEE opened the door by herself. Then both of them got back on the elevator, where again they did not interact, although KAYLEE was always seen watching her mother, hoping for the attention she deserved. In August 2021, the trial against both of them began in the Birmingham Crown Court in England. The prosecutor's lawyer, Andrew Smith, opened the trial by saying that the victim's death was due to her having received serious injuries to the chest and abdomen on August 8, 2020. Senior Investigating Officer Adam Johnson from the Homicide Unit of the Force said that the police believed the level of aggression to which KAYLEE was subjected became increasingly blunt and violent during Nikki and Callum's relationship. Nikki's statement was then read where she alleged that this jerk Callum had been violent with her daughter on repeated occasions and that she herself had seen the bruises. However, she admitted not having sought medical attention or called the police. The woman also broke down and tearfully said that she had never hit KAYLEE hard enough to supposedly cause serious injuries. Obviously, at this point, neither you nor I believe her because we know what the behavior of this heartless mother was like. In response to this, the prosecution presented the woman's TikToks of her dancing and smiling just a few days after her daughter's death. Nikki responded that she thought about KAYLEE every minute and that even though she appeared cheerful, she was still shattered inside. But if your daughter dies, how do you start recording TikToks? How do you have the taste? What is your intention? The motivation, or rather to record videos. During the same hearing, it was established that Callum had on his record crimes related to he had threatened to break his face more than once claimed that none of these crimes were related to child violence. At that time, it seemed that both defendants would continue to blame each other, but a key witness changed everything. Matthew Alport, Callum's former best friend, told the jury about the boy's bad temper and said he had threatened to break his face more than once. In addition, he pointed out that he was hoarding all the money from the accused entered his daughter's room and absolute. But this was not the most relevant thing, but the fact that the witness declared that he had been in the apartment during the night of the crime. He expressed that Callum took approximately 10 minutes to put KAYLEE to bed while Nikki smoked some happiness herb on the balcony. Then the accused went into her daughter's room and Matthew heard her talking to her, although he couldn't make out what she was saying. Immediately after, Nikki left KAYLEE's room and went to her bed with Callum. At that moment, the witness heard the little girl complain as if she wanted to play instead of sleep. And seeing that she wasn't getting the attention she was asking for, KAYLEE stopped screaming, but Callum came out of his room to go back into the little girl's. After 20 minutes, the couple returned to the living room and said that KAYLEE was sick. No more noise was heard coming from the girl's room or the piece. Matthew didn't ask what had happened because he assumed that KAYLEE had just thrown up her food. Based on this statement then, the prosecution was able to carry out an approximate recreation of the events that occurred on August 8, 2020. Callum and Matthew were already inside when the cameras caught Nikki and KAYLEE arriving after spending an hour at the local park. Even with a friend present in the house around 7 in the evening, the couple tried to have intimacy but got angry because the girl wanted to play instead of sleep. This caused them to attack her severely, although it was not clear which of the two accused delivered the fatal blows. While there was no direct evidence of what happened afterwards, it was known that KAYLEE subsequently vomited repeatedly and then lost her life due to the injuries. All this during the night. Then on August 6, 2021, the jury issued its verdict. They believed that the defendant's intention was not to cause KAYLEE's death but to assault her as they had lost their patience. And that's how both Nikki and Caleb were found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 and 14 years in prison respectively. They had to serve 2/3 of their sentences before they could consider their parole. That's how ridiculous the sentence was. In addition, Nikki was sentenced to 3 years in prison after being found guilty of child cruelty in relation to Kelly's historical injuries. Kelly, on the other hand, was acquitted of that charge. After hearing the verdicts, Kelly's grandmother said that the impact of her granddaughter's death would stay with her for the rest of her life. She would always remember her smile and added that before the crime, she was preparing to buy her a uniform for the garden. And regarding the official version of events, Detective Adam Jobson stated that he didn't believe that everything that had happened on August 8, 2020 would ever be fully known, and added that Nikki had failed her daughter and had not been able to protect her, even though this was her duty as a mother. If you like this type of content and would like to continue supporting the channel, you can become one of the members. By clicking here below, there is a symbolic cost that would help me to continue growing, and you can have access to extra content and also decide what you want the next video to be about. And also, if you like these topics of paranormal crimes, mysterious things, every Thursday there is the Much More Mysteries podcast that I do with my partner Edson. Thank you.